Good morning, class. Today we are in book 3 of our Sex and Math, and we're working on lesson 15, which is rounding to the nearest 10 and 100. So I want to start out with a note. If your child is having trouble rounding, something that I like to do when I have them all here in the class with me is I put a long strip of masking tape on the floor and mark it off as either tens or hundreds, and I have them jump from, actually, let me rephrase that. I don't mark it off as tens or hundreds. I count by ones. So usually I think I do it from like 100 to 200 or 100 to 300 if I have the space. And then I'll have them find a number, for example, 158, and then look for the nearest round number is what I call the numbers that end with 0, because the 0 is round. And I'll have them jump from one number to the closest round number. So that's a good like kinesthetic body movement activity for kids to practice rounding. So for today, since I don't have you here with me, we're going to be rounding on our giant number line on the board. So I have started by listing 0 through 200, and I'm counting by tens. So I want to look at this a little bit to start with just talking about the number line. What numbers are in between 0 and 10? Well, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So if I would say find 7 on the number line, we're going to use the halfway mark right here. And we're going to say, well, that's 5 because it's halfway in between 0 and 10. And so then 7 is going to be about right here. That would be 7, okay? And then we're going to look at my 7 there and say, well, which round number is 7 closer to? Is it closer here to the 0 or is it closer to the 10? And you'll look at it and you'll say, well, it has this distance to get to the 10, but it has this distance to get to the 0. It's closer to 10. So we would round 7 to the number 10. Okay? So we'll try again with a bigger number. Let's say 92. I'm going to find my halfway mark between 90 and 100. And what would that represent? What's halfway between 90 and 100? 95. So this is 95 right here. And I said 92. Well, 92 is going to be over here. It's going to be 90, 91, 92, 93, 94. And then after 95, we'll have 96, 97, 98, 99. So 92 might be right about there. So is it closer to the 90 or is it closer to the 100? Look at the distance here on the number line. It's pretty close to the 90, whereas it's pretty far away from the 100. So 92 would round to 90. We say round down. So talking about rounding down, here's a common mistake students make. They are asked to round, let's say, 74. And they look at that, and you're going to learn the rule. The rule is you look at the ones place. If it is below 5, we round down. If it is 5 and above, we round up. That's the rule that we'll learn, that you'll memorize, and that you'll use so that you don't have to look at a number line for every single problem, okay? But the mistake is made where people look at this number and they say, I have to round down, and so they'll tell me, well, 74 we round down, so we're going to say it's closer to 60. Well, let's look at a number line. Halfway in between here, 70 and 80, we're going to have 75. 74 is going to be just before 75. Now, look at the distance. From 74 all the way to 60, that's a pretty big distance when 74 to 80 is just this big. We forgot a about this round number. My students sometimes think, oh, I'm rounding down, so I have to lower the tens place. Not true. What we talk about when we're rounding down is we're just going to get rid of those 4 and round down to 70, not to 60. Okay? We'll talk about that a little bit more as we do some examples. Let me get rid of everything I have going on here. All right, so first example is the price of the jacket is $63. What is the price to the nearest 10? So this is what we were just talking about. We're rounding to the nearest 10, which means we need to look at the ones place. So I can do it on my number line here. 60. Let's get rid of a couple of these marks. Okay, so 63 right there is going to be 65. So I've got 60, 61, 62, 63, 64, 65. So 63 might be right about at that dot, right? So look at the round numbers that it's closest to. It's somewhere between 60 and 70. Is it closer to the 60 or is it closer to the 70? You can look at the space and say, it's closer to 60. So we're going to round this to $60. Alternatively, if you don't want to use the number line, you can use the rule and say, oh, 3 is less than 5. So I'm going to round down to 60. Okay, next example. The camera cost $367. What is the price to the nearest $100? So in this case, we're not going to look at the ones because they want us to round to the nearest 100, which means we have to look at the place value that's next to the nearest 100, which is the tens. So my number line here isn't going to help us a whole lot because it doesn't have 300. So looking at 367, let's say this is 100, this is 200, this is 300, this is 400. Where is 367 going to go? Is it between 100 and 200? No. Is it between 200 and 300? Oh, we're getting closer, but would I have a 367 somewhere in there? Mm-mm. What about between 300 and 400? Yes. So this is going to have 301, 302, 303, all the way up to 399. So I have to figure out where 367 will go. Well, let's mark a halfway point here. What is going to be halfway between 300 and 400? Riker? What's halfway in between?
350.
350 is halfway in between. So is 367 less than 350? Does it go over here? Or is it more than 350? Does it go over here? 367 is the same as 350? No, what is it? It's more than 350. So we'll put it right about here, 367. So then we're going to look. Is it closer to the 300 or is it closer to the 400? This space is shorter, so we round 367 to $400. Okay? Next example, and this is where the rounding gets fun because we're going to use rounding to make our math problems easier. Okay? Jasmine bought a computer game that cost $49. And she bought a new baseball glove that cost $28. round the prices to help you find how much money she spent. So they're telling us we don't have to add this. We just need an estimate. We're going to round. So here's how you can save yourself some work. If the problem asks you to round, don't add it first because you don't need to do this work. You can round, which will make your addition really, really simple. So 49, look at the ones place there, 9, that's definitely higher than 5, so we're going to have to round up. 49 on a number line is between 40 and 50. So is it closer to 40 or closer to 50? Should be closer to 50. So we'll round 49 up to 50. 28. What two round numbers is that between? 28 is between 20 and 30. 8 is bigger than 5, so we're going to round up to 30. So now add this. I barely even have to think about it. 50 and 30, that gives me $80. She spent about $80. Okay, so that's the end of our examples, but before we move on to some practice problems, I want to talk about vocabulary. What words will you see that tell you that you need to round? So the first word you might see is the word round. They might tell you round these numbers. Cool, that's what I'm going to do. You might also see the word estimate. If they tell you to estimate the price of something, they are wanting you to round, okay? The next word that you might see is about. And this one tends to be the tricky one. People notice round and they notice estimate, but they don't always notice about. So if you're reading a word problem, let's say like the last one where Jasmine bought a baseball glove and I forget what else she bought. She bought a computer game. So Jasmine bought a baseball glove, Jasmine bought a computer game. About how much did she spend? They're not straight out telling you to round. They're not saying round, they're not saying estimate, but this word means the same thing. About means round these numbers and then figure out approximately or about how much she spent. So there's another one, about, or you might see approximately. And these words both say round. So something that I do with my students in class, it's totally silly and I just made it up one year, is when you see the word about, put your finger on your nose and let that be a reminder to you that you're supposed to round. Just make that a habit. About. Ooh, about. Finger on nose. What am I supposed to do? What should I do when I see about? Round. That's right. I have to round for those problems. Okay? With this skill, usually it's the words that trip us up, not necessarily how to do the skill. Okay. So, I would like for you to practice just a couple rounding problems. I'm going to put some numbers on the board, and I want you to round it to the nearest 10. So we'll start with $27, $52, and $16. Okay? We're going to round to the nearest 10. So, 27. What's it in between, Riker? 27, what two round numbers does this come in between? 27 on a number line. If we had 27 here, what would be here and what would be here? What round numbers? Would this be 40? No. Would wouldn't be 40, what would it be? Yes, it would be 30. What about this? This would be 20. So is 27 closer to 30 or is it closer to 20? It's closer to 30. We're going to round it to $30. Okay? 52. What two round numbers is 52 in between on a number line, Riker? What two round numbers? It's in between 50 and 60. So here's 55. 52 is going to be over here somewhere. Is it closer to 50 or 60?
50.
Closer to 50. Okay, 16. What two round numbers is that in between? 10 and 20. Here's 15, so 16 is going to be about right there. 16 is closer to 20. Okay, so that's rounding to the nearest 10. We're also going to look at rounding to the nearest 100. I'm going to give you 3 more problems to practice. So let's say we have 183, 429, and 652. Okay, so we're not rounding to the tens place here, we're rounding to the nearest 100. So we have to look at the tens place in each of them. So Riker, what two hundreds would 183 be between? It would be between 100 and 200. So halfway in between is 150. So is 183 over on this side or is it over on this side?
200.
It's closer to 200, so we round it to $200. Okay, 429. What 200s are we in between there?
400.
We got 400 and 500. So looking at the 2 there, that's less than 5. Is it going to be closer to 400 or closer to 500? It's closer to 400. And finally, 652. What 200s? 60? 600 and 700. So, ooh, that's a 5. What was our rule with the 5s? They make it round up. So 652 is going to round up to 700. Let's look at that on the number line. This would be 650. So 652 is going to be just right there, kind of right next to it, huh? But that makes it closer to 700. What if we just had 650? 650. That's exactly halfway between 600 and 700. This space is equal to this space. So because it's exactly halfway in the middle, we've just made a rule about it and we said round it up. If we make it to halfway, we're just going to round up to 700. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that's the end of your lesson today. Now is the time to start written practice, which is on page 82 of your textbook. I hope you have a great day, and I'll see you again soon.